Oopsie doopsie. Okie dokie. Okay, I think I'm live. Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning if you're in Australia. Hello, wherever you are in the world. Hope everyone is safe and healthy and, taking care of themselves through these trying times. So here we are with our weekly Q&A. And I have got my puppy and my coffee with me this morning. Well, I always have my coffee with me. I love coffee. And I've got Minnie with me this morning. Here's little Minnie Mousy. Minnie. Hey, man. I've got a little head. Oh, she's in a little. Say hello. Say hello to everybody, Minnie. Here's my little Minnie Mouse. She's so cute. Yes, I know. I know I love my Minnie Mousey. She's one of my little rescue puppies. Hey? So Minnie I found on the streets. How long have we been together? 6 years, I think. 6 years. And yeah, she was skin and bone on the streets and she wasn't microchipped and I took her to the vets and we put her on lost and found. No one claimed her. It was very obvious that she was dumped. And anyway, Minnie has been living with me ever since and she's like a little princess. Aren't you, Min? And she loves her mum. Yeah, loves her mum. She's such a good girl. I know. So she's sitting here with me while I do my live today. Okay, so I'll just wait for some people to come on if you're popping on. I already have a question to talk about. From Sandy. So Sandy has given me a question she'd like some help with. So I'll talk about that. If you have any questions while I'm in the live today, pop them in the comments and I will answer them for you. So what we have today is a question about separation anxiety in horses. And this is really common and can be a real big problem. Whether you've got separation anxiety at home, when you're taking them away, out of the paddock, or you're changing paddocks, or you're going to a show. That's really bad, because if you're going to a show and you've got one horse tied up to the float and you're taking another one out, or you're taking him out to a show, that's really, really, really tricky, because obviously it's going to affect your performance. And I did have problems with that many years ago with my two horses. I used to take them to the shows, like competing together, and if we would take one into the ring, the other one would be really stressed. Left at the float, more so than the other way around, actually. Yeah, so the one that was left was always more stressful than the one that I was actually taking away. So it can be a really big problem, and there's a lot of information out there, what to do. And I'd actually read something yesterday, some advice of just tying them up and leaving them there. It's not good. That's not going to be effective at all, and I'm really anti anything that's going to affect the welfare of the horse. So let's talk a little bit about why horses. I'm just checking Minnie's leg. She's got a little lump. What is that, Min? I'm doing doggy examination here. She's got a little lump on her leg. Anyway, I'll remember that. We'll have a little look. I suppose you're a bit old, Min. I suppose you're going to get a lump or two, or some some issues. Excuse me. So separation anxiety. Separation anxiety in horses is a symptom of an underlying cause. So what is the underlying cause? The underlying cause is your horse is insecure. They're insecure. They're a sensitive horse that's not confident in themselves. So I've written some points down here just in case I got a little bit. So separation anxiety is what have I written down here? So it's an unconfident horse an anxious horse, a horse that is insecure generally. Okay, so you'll quite often notice that a horse that gets separation anxiety when leaving the paddock or being separated from their mates will show some type of anxiety or some issues in other areas such as training. They may they're not really soft and responsive in their training responses. They may have some other issues. You may have a few behavior problems under saddle. It's a symptom of insecurity in your horse. So horses naturally, obviously naturally we know that horses are social animals, and in the wild they live in a herd environment, and they live in a herd environment. This is protection. They're a prey animal. They rely on their other mates around them, the herd, to keep them safe. So this is very natural. They are social animals, and they do bond very quickly. So we have to deal with that when we've domesticated them, and we do take them away from their mates and everything. So it's not to be individually paddocked for a start is not normal for a horse, and it is going to cause some issues if they haven't got horses around them. So this is something to look at just before we go into some other issues about separation anxiety. Horses, they should never be alone, because if they're alone, even if they look like they're quiet and that, there's going to be a level of anxiety underneath. If they're alone in a paddock, they don't have any horses around them, they're not going to sleep properly, they're not going to relax, because their innate behavior is they rely on other horses around them for their safety. So you can imagine a horse that's alone in a paddock with no other horses around them. You're never going to get rid of this innate need for protection, as they are a prey animal. So an alone horse out in the wild is going to be very, very vulnerable to, being eaten, by predators and attacked. So it's their survival mechanism. They do need to have other horses around them for equine welfare, and also just to fulfill that need of having a safety. So separation anxiety is obviously a symptom of, as I spoke before, of a level of insecurity in your horse. So if you paddock your horse, so to start with, we need to create some security in the horse. Insecurity can be also exacerbated by your horse's natural temperament. Now, thoroughbreds, off the track thoroughbreds, thoroughbred racehorses, they are a sensitive breed. They've come from a very a highly demanding and highly stressful environment. So this is just setting them up to have issues with separation anxiety to start with. Their life in racing is a very demanding routine and a very demanding life, and they don't have a lot of control over it, in that they are quite often forced to do things. They're forced to go into the barriers, they're forced to go out to work. The training in racing, as in other sports, but particularly racing, their basic responses, as we've talked about in other live videos, your basic responses of when you train, you're first educating a horse under saddle. You train them to stop on a light response. We need to train them to stop lightly, to go on a light response, to put in your control mechanisms. Now these become blurred in racehorses because they habituate to so much pressure. It's not a priority to have a racehorse stop lightly. In fact, you're never going to have a racehorse stop lightly because of, I'm not going to say never, because you can train racehorses really beautifully in their slow work, but more than often they are just going to habituate to the pressure, and when you slow them down from a gallop, they're going to start leaning into the bit and things like that. So their responses are blurred, and this creates anxiety in horses themselves, and it sort of goes back to when you train very clear basic responses. And this is where I stress the importance of, when you get your off the track thoroughbred, so important, whether you think your off the track thoroughbred is quiet or not, you need to go and retrain your basic responses of your stop with the reins, you go with the legs, and having them stop and go very clearly on responses, this in itself is going to create a calmness in the horse, because they have control of their environment. They have control of how they respond. As soon as they do the right thing, such as soon as they stop from the light rein aid, you release the pressure. They know what's going to happen. They know what to do. When a horse doesn't know what to do, or they think they're responding to something and it doesn't work and the pressure doesn't go away, this causes stress in the horse, and this causes confusion. And this goes all the way back to showing in issues like separation anxiety and other behavior problems. So I've sort of gone off a little bit of a tangent on that one. But to go back to separation anxiety, it is a symptom of an underlying cause, and it's a symptom of insecurity. It's a symptom of an unconfident horse, and a horse that has come from a stressful environment or is in a stressful environment. So I hope that makes sense. Where I was going with it is to start with, obviously if you do paddock your horse alone and they don't have any other horses around, they're not going to have separation anxiety because they have nothing to get, no other horse to leave to be separated from. But that does not mean that they don't have any anxiety. That's another topic, and I have talked about that when it comes to making sure that your horse has other companions, other equine companions. When it comes to separation anxiety and they've got attached to another horse, there's a few ways to address this. And I had one of my Off The Track Thoroughbreds when I started retraining him, and I would bring him. So this is Dragon. So I've had Dragon off the track for quite a while now. Back in the early days, when I would bring him in away from the other horses, he would get very, very anxious. And he would be pawing and wanting to go back to the other horses while I had him tied up in my, my area where I saddle and brush and things like that. So the solution is not to get angry. What am I trying to say here? What not to do. Okay, so one, do not ever get angry with your horse. Do not raise your voice, get angry and just, demand stand there and things like that. That's only going to increase the stress in your horse, increase the fear response, and cause more anxiety. So do not get angry, do not get frustrated, and do not just demand that your horse stands there, because it's just not going to work. And look at it as a symptom of an underlying cause. Okay, a symptom of an unconfident horse. Why is your horse unconfident? So why are Off The Track Thoroughbreds unconfident? They have come, as once I said, they've come from a very demanding environment where their basic responses start to become blurred. If they've been trained back in the beginning of their career, they often become blurred. You will often see Off The Track Thoroughbreds, they habituate to a lot of mouth pressure. They're put under a lot of pressure at a young age to perform. You will often see them, they may not want to go out on the track or in the barriers on race days, and they're basically forced to do it. It's, they're there to perform, and yeah, that's what they're basically made to do. Now, this is going to create stress in the horse, and it's going to create anxiety. Another one with Off The Track Thoroughbreds, we look at their temperament. Okay, so they are a sensitive breed, and quite often you'll get ones that are a little bit more highly, what we call a hot breed, so they can be prone to more issues like separation anxiety than maybe a horse that's a little bit more relaxed and not so reactive to the environment. When I look at solving separation anxiety, so the first thing I do is go back and start off with little baby steps. So number one, if you're wanting to, with Dragon, for example, I had a daily routine. Now he would get anxious every time I took him out of the paddock and brushed him and that. So instead of, horses learn by association. So if you've got a horse that is anxious and coming out in the paddock, you want to start to solve these issues of separation anxiety in baby steps. So for example, if you've got a horse that's anxious, you wouldn't take him out and leave him out for an hour and a half and just basically demand that he deal with his anxiety. You would take him out. So this is what I did with Dragon. I would take him out. No, I did this every day. I would take him out and just spend 10 minutes. I would take him up to I would let him be able to see the other horses. So for a start, I wouldn't take him completely away from the other horses where he couldn't see them. I had, at that particular time, I had my setup where the paddock to the other horses was visible so he could see them. I made the experience of where he was a positive experience. So I put a hay net out for him when he was tied up in my area while I was brushing him. I gave him a treat. You can give them a little bit of a food, bring them out and give them a feed. So they go, oh, I'm coming away from my mates, but I'm getting a feed. I've got my hay net, and I just gave him a groom. I didn't do any, I didn't saddle him up and take him for a ride or anything like that. I didn't even do any training for the first week. What I did was just bring him in, let him associate with it with a positive experience. Kept it very short. I kept it for 10 minutes, then I would increase it to 15 minutes, and then after the 10 or 15 minutes, I would then put him back in the paddock and leave it. I didn't do any riding or anything like that. What I did do, I may do some initial, like a few repetitions of getting him to stop on a light response. So this is really, really important because even though it doesn't look like it is associated, having unclear training and blurred training is a cause of separation anxiety. And you will notice a horse that has very clear training in their basic responses, their foundation training, will very rarely have problems with separation anxiety. So horses with separation anxiety, if you check how they are responding to their stop and their go and their turn aids, you will more than often find that they aren't clear and they're heavy, or they're not responding to light pressures. So that is associated to it. So part of, am I losing my voice here? I don't know why. I think I'll have a sip of coffee. So that is part of the solution of fixing separation anxiety, is retraining your off the track thoroughbred in their basic responses. Now, if you've just recently got your off the track thoroughbred and they're spelling and things like that, and you're not bringing them into work, you're letting them have a letdown, you can just start off with when you're, even in the paddock, with the head collar, asking them to move forward from lead pressure, asking them to step back from lead pressure, and asking them to do this to light responses. Even that will help. So that's not bringing them into, full-on retraining, but it is just giving them some aspects of retraining the basic responses. And another thing is separating them. So I know with you, Sandy, answering your question, you've mentioned that she's by herself all through the week, and then during the weekend you put her mate in. So this is probably going to be a little bit more tricky, because you can see that all through the week she is by herself, and then all of a sudden on the 2 days of the weekend she has her mate. So it's not consistent. There's too much of a gap between her being by herself and then on the weekends having her mate in there with her. And I think this is going to be a little bit more tricky to try and solve. Instead, it would be better to try and do something on a daily basis, or even every second day, where you put her mate in there with her, or had a mate. I think you mentioned that you may have another horse, so she may be having a companion. And also what I didn't find out is when you take her mate out on the weekend, how far away are the paddocks? Are they next to each other? Now, if you've actually got them separated and he's like 2 paddocks away, I would suggest separating them but having them in adjacent paddocks. So trying not to let the change be so significant, like still having them adjacent to each other, and then on the weekends putting them in together, I think that would work a lot easier. But if you're actually completely removing him and taking him out of sight, that is going to be very stressful for her. And then, you know, all of a sudden adding him back in on those 2 days, it's just not consistent enough. Horses really respond really well to regular routine. So what would be a better situation to do would be I'm just thinking, like, even I think that the more ideal situation would be to have them paddocked next to each other, and then maybe on the weekends letting them go in together, so that you haven't got such a big, you know, change from having a mate in there with her to then all of a sudden not having him around at all. That's going to be quite difficult to overcome. It's like you need to create a situation on a regular daily routine. So for an example is what I did with Dragon. He was in with his mates all the time and he was getting anxious when he came out. So I would remove him every day. I would do it out by himself where he could see his mates for 10 minutes, and gradually over a period of doing that for 3 or 4 days, I would increase the time. And while I was doing this, I was retraining his basic responses as well. And I found that within 2 weeks, his separation anxiety completely went. Okay, he wasn't, to the stage where I could float him and take him away to shows by himself and everything. So it was a process, and I took baby steps with it. So I hope this makes sense. You want to and establish a regular routine. So I'm trying to work out if with putting a horse in the paddock, it would be a little bit better, I think, and I think you have got this coming, is her having a consistent mate in the paddock, or her having a, having her mate adjacent to her, instead of the drastic difference of having a mate for 2 days and then not having one for the rest of the week. That's just a little bit too much of a change. So I hope this makes sense. Just to go over, so the points is, what is separation anxiety? Separation anxiety is only a symptom. It's a symptom of an insecure horse, an unconfident horse, a horse that is stressed, or as I've mentioned with Off The Track Thoroughbreds, has come from a stressful environment, and we need to look at it that way instead of trying to demand a horse with separation anxiety to just deal with it, or stand there if you've brought them in. That's not going to work. That's actually going to exacerbate it and make it worse, and it's not conducive with equine welfare. We need to look at why they have separation anxiety. So they're an off-the-track thoroughbred. They've come from a stressful environment. You also too look at off-the-track thoroughbreds. They're forever in. They're usually always surrounded by their mates. Okay, they're usually in a stabled 24-hour stabled situation where they're always stable with horses around them. They're never by themselves. So if you're all of a sudden going to expect an off-the-track thoroughbred to go out in a paddock for a start, out of a very regimented routine with horses all around them, they're not going to. They're definitely going to have some issues with that and adjusting to that. We also have, issues with them in racing, with not actually being able to physically, touch each other often. This is not in every stable. I do actually have worked in stables and am at the moment where they can touch each other over the yards and that, which is fantastic. That's really good. But that's another topic, and I won't go down the I think I have spoken about it in another live, of the important aspect of horses being able to mutually groom each other and at least touch each other. So the solution to separation anxiety is baby steps, okay, and to keep something consistent. So instead of bringing them out from a long period of time and making them deal with a period of being away from the other horses, take them away gradually and build that up. And when you have taken them away, or you're leaving them in the paddock and you've taken their mate out, so you might have a horse. This is another example of a horse, their mate's been taken out, the horse that's left in the paddock is having separation anxiety. So with that's a little bit more tricky, because the horse you've taken out is most probably, if he's very relaxed and everything, Uh, Once again, try and create a routine where if they haven't got another mate, take the other horse out shorter periods of time and keep them in view of the horse that's in the paddock and that is stressed. With the horse that's in the paddock and is stressed, give them a feed. Give them something, a positive thing. So every time you take the mate out, the horse that's left in the paddock gets something positive, a positive reinforcement, a feed, a biscuit of hay, something like that. And then remove the other horse for a short period of time, 10 minutes, keep them in view, build up from that. So the next day, do the same thing. The next day, do the same thing. And then the next day, maybe move that other horse away a little bit further. The horse you've taken out, the horse that's got the anxiety in the paddock, give them the feed. So keep it very consistent, keep a routine. Try and associate the horse that has separation anxiety. Try and change their mindset from being separated as a negative experience to being separated as a positive experience. That's one step. 2, retraining the basic foundations will really make a difference with horses with separation anxiety. Start to when you're going through the retraining process, once that's consolidated and you have your horse retrained to the light responses of stop, go and turn and yield, that in itself will help horses with separation anxiety. Yeah, I think that is pretty well covered. Let me know, Sandy, if this makes sense, and let me know how you're going. If anyone else has any questions about horses with separation anxiety when you watch this video, just pop them in the comments below and I'll answer them for you. I also wanted to say a big welcome to our new members of the group. I'm really excited to building up this group and making it a really supportive and educational environment for everyone who has Off the Track Thoroughbreds. There's not a lot of support out there. There's not a lot of really good education out there when it comes to Off the Track Thoroughbreds, and that is my goal, is to create an environment where you're getting education that is scientific based, is proven, instead of getting, all different. Quite often in other groups you may post a question and you will get like 10 different answers from 10 different people, and that can be really stressful and confusing in itself. So my goal is to create a really supportive environment with this group, and one that is based on education. So I really want it to be educational for you guys, to offer some valuable content. So let me know if you want me to pop in any articles. I'm going to try and, I'm not going to say try, I will start to add some Zoom sessions in here, which will be really good. So I will start to try and organize. And actually, I think we'll have to do Zoom sessions. We'll do a Zoom session somewhere else, and then we can put the recording in this group. So lots of really good things that I've got in store for this group here. So once again, I hope this was helpful. Separation anxiety, and let me know if you have any questions. Pop in the comments if you want me to talk about something else for our next Q&A next weekend, next Sunday if you're in Australian Eastern Standard Time. And I will see you in the group, and have a lovely day or evening or wherever you are in the world. And I will pop little Minnie. She can say bye-bye. Bye, Min. Bye, Min. How cute is she? Love my puppies. Love my puppies. Okay, bye. You pop down there, Min.